and he did a horror movie night. And so the two horror movies that we watched were it was three. We watched The Shining, Candyman, and 13 Ghosts. Like,
Yes.
so all really like just heavy, not even just like ghosts, but like the like perversion of mind. And there's like, and then every time like a boob would pop up on the screen, he would run up to the screen and put a pillow on it. And I like at like 15, I remember going like, we could also just like not watch this. Like, you know, we have access to Lord of the Rings. Like, but I remember telling my dad that, and then like Dan getting in trouble. Like he had to, hey Dad, do you remember when Dan did the horror movie night? And we watched The Shining and Candyman.
I don't, but if I was the youth pastor, that would have been a problem.
Yeah, you were not happy about it.
That's not a good idea.
No, it was good. And every time a boob would pop up on the screen, he would run up and put a pillow over the screen, like where the boob was.
Was that effective?
It was great. Yeah. And I've been pure ever since. I actually haven't even had sex with my wife. It's been artificial insemination. You know.
Wow. Wow.
Good.
Taking that holiness doctrine to another level.
Yeah. When are we talking about that?
Yeah. How to do this right.
Yeah. I mean, we offended Lutherans last week. Maybe this time it's time to offend Pentecostals.
Yeah. Well, so I'm game.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Odd Testament podcast. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Eric.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, Eric. Oh,
hi, Greg.
I'm Greg.
And what's your addiction?
And I find myself entertaining.
Do we want to do take two or
entertain myself?
So do we. No take two. Okay. Welcome to the Odd Testament podcast. This is the place where we dive deep into strange and curious and odd stories from the Bible. And whether you're here for a fresh perspective or a laugh or just to explore a weird side of faith, like you're in the right place. So we are going to get started with some get to know you questions. Well, maybe just one. Guys, you guys are cinephiles.
That's right. I got a film reel tattooed on my arm.
What are your top three?
Yeah.
You what?
I don't love sin.
Oh gosh, look at you, Mr. Holy. Mr. Holy.
I am.
Well, you're gonna have to teach me that, okay?
Perfect in all of my ways to me.
So what are your top three movies of all time? Any genre, any era? What are your top three movies of all time? And maybe a little brief explanation of why.
Well, there's Walk to Remember.
Mandy Moore.
Gosh.
Come on.
Chick flicks. Wait, is that PC? Is that politically correct?
Left Behind.
Oh gosh.
James Cameron or Nicolas Cage. Like that's because there was two, you know.
And
Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Okay, you got me.
Yeah.
All right. My favorite movie of all time is really clear and legitimate. Is and now it's gone. Good Will Hunting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of
lots
my
of quotes.
Too.
Yes. Very quotable. Very quotable.
Yeah.
Especially all the swears, right?
They swear.
Yeah.
Oh, I never noticed.
And do you remember that scene where they parked the car in Harvard Yard?
Harvard?
Yeah. Have you heard that? That's how you get into a Boston accent. Park the car in Harvard Yard.
Okay.
Yeah.
There it is.
And then once you get into that, that's the intro.
Nice.
And then Duncan.
So Good Will Hunting's your top of all time?
Top, period.
Do you have Do you have a 2-3, or you just want to leave it at Good
I
Will
will,
Hunting?
but I'm gonna hear some others so I can remember some of the others.
Okay.
That one is far and away though my favorite
Okay.
movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric, what about you?
Well, I mean, I think it's clear by my video screen. I love Captain America. So can I just do the Captain America as a character movie and just incorporate all of the, I think it's 9 movies that he's
All as
in,
one?
just as one entity. Otherwise, they're
Sure.
going to take my top 3.
Sure.
So I'll just do that, and that'll be the top one. I really love Interstellar, Christopher
Yeah.
Nolan's like space epic. Just a fantastic movie. Like score,
Yes.
story, like the how he plays with time, like just awesome. And then I feel like I should do like a comedy or something like that. Um uh I mean Anchorman. Like
Mm.
here's my judge of like favorite movie. If I was ever like, I guess we don't do this now, but we're old enough that we remember scrolling through channels. If it ever popped up on a channel and no matter where it was, would I
Mm.
finish the movie to the end? Like, would I
Yeah.
stop whatever plans I had that day to finish that movie? And I think if Anchorman popped up, no matter what, I'm just gonna finish it, in my room that smells of rich mahogany. And like, so yeah, I'll go if I can just Captain America movies as a whole, Interstellar, Anchorman.
Are pastors allowed to watch Anchorman?
I don't think so. And that's
That
not
makes it
why
even better.
I'm not denominationally held on to. So
There you
Yeah.
go. You watch it in the secret, in the quiet place, huh?
Nice.
That's
Nice. We're doing good
that,
work here.
that felt wrong. I shouldn't have done that. So. Well, my top
Someone's agreeing
3.
with you.
Yeah, right. My top 3, Good Will Hunting is one of them. I think it'll always be one of my top 3 favorites. So Good Will Hunting, I love the story. It's perfect. Robin Williams is phenomenal in it. R.I.P. Shawshank Redemption is up there too. I'm not putting them in order. I'm just kind of naming my top 3 because it's hard for me to order these.
Oh yeah.
So Shawshank Redemption, another classic. I found out recently that Shawshank Redemption was kind of like it kind of became popular after the theaters. I didn't know that. Did you guys know this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And almost has a perfect critic score. Like
Wow.
I think it has like a 99% positive critic score on like IMDb, like, which is unheard of.
Wow.
That
Yeah.
in Paddington 2,
That is true. I have
like
heard that.
no joke. And if
No
you've
joke.
seen Paddington 2, you will know why, because it's amazing. Like it'll make you cry. I don't care how hardened your heart is. Like even if you're Pharaoh in the book of Exodus, like there is no hardened heart, because this is Bible, right? We got to use those
Yeah.
references.
There you
Like
go.
you will cry in Paddington too. Like it's just a guarantee. So
Yes, man. And I would say to round out my top 3, again, these aren't ordered, but just I'm just throwing them out. Arrival. Have you guys seen Arrival?
Ooh, yeah,
With Amy
Hectopod.
Adams and Jeremy Renner?
Yeah.
I like the first time I saw it, like I was thinking about it like 2 weeks after I saw it, because I was just like blown away by the concept and the idea. And plus, like I love how they dive into language and how language shapes the way you think and that kind of. I think it's
Nice.
so
yeah.
applicable to what we do, But I thought that movie was fascinating. So
Real great. Yeah.
You've never seen it? I don't believe redheads should be in film. That's not true.
That's why you that's why you
Just
stopped your wife's acting career.
That's
right?
why. Yes, exactly. Yeah. I am married to a redhead. So my other 2 are Fifth Element. Because I'm genuinely entertained. I have probably seen that movie 20 times. And I am still so entertained through the entire thing. It's so campy, but it's also not like a B-level movie. It's just, just great.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
what's my other one? Lord of the Rings. The best of the three is Return of the King, and so I'll go with Return of the King. But the whole thing. If we could get Frodo to cry a little less, and them walking through the mountains, just move it on, get this going, then that would help. I have watched that a number of times, skipping through the Frodo and Sam scenes. Just yeah.
Wow. Cool.
That's a good choice.
It's still great. Yep.
Man, there's so many I feel like I left out
Yeah.
because I just did the top 3 that I can just off the top of my head, but there's all actions and thrillers, and I love horror movies. I do. I love horror movies, and Robin hates that I love horror movies, and so I have nobody to watch them with, so I just watch them by myself.
I'm naturally wound. I don't need more.
Yeah. I've never it's only recently that a friend of mine who is like loves horror movies, like goes to the theater, loves that whole experience. And we just this last Halloween, he was telling me about like the haunted houses he goes to. And I just told him, I was like, okay, we're friends, so I can say this without I love you. I go, I think that's the dumbest thing that has ever been made. Like, I am going to pay someone to frighten me and make me second guess my safety in my own home. Like, I genuinely, not even like, there's nothing biblical about it. It's just, why would I want to be scared about walking up the stairs and someone grabbing their hand like out from underneath it? Like, I don't need that. Yeah, I'm wound too tight already. I don't need any of that. Because of this, I can walk through a church that is empty and pitch black and not be scared at all. Like, never had chills, never had a goosebump, anything like that. If I hear a noise, I like go, hey, anyone else here? You want to walk together? Like I'm so excited that another person's there. Like, so for any of our listeners, you can be like me.
Yeah.
See, guys,
Sure.
your explanations make a lot of sense. They're very logical. I don't identify. I do like to pay somebody to make me scared to walk up the stairs. I don't know what it is. I want to be scared to walk into my basement by myself. I don't know why. I just,
before you're like, I've got my gun with me.
Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just looking for a reason to pop some caps.
It's a big gun and a bat. I have my gun taped to a bat. You better watch yourselves.
Oh, well, thank you guys. Thanks for humoring me. Thanks for sharing just a little bit about.
I do think I'm still stuck on this. I know you want to move on, but I'm still stuck on this.
No, you're good.
It's not about you. It's that horror movies, I'm thinking, are like the opposite of superhero movies, where in horror movies, whoever is the villain somehow is the strongest thing that's ever been ever. And so they there's a nail through a board, they put it upside the bad guy's head, and it goes in, it's clear he's dead, and somehow he's still alive. Superhero movies, it doesn't matter that this character weighs 95 pounds. She can kick a Delta Force operator in the chest, and that guy goes flying against a wall. I don't know why, but it's like the opposite.
Yeah, she was trained by Russians.
Exactly. So she can do that. So, by the way, Black Widow is one of my favorite Marvel movies. It's another, I'm really entertained. It's my scale is, am I entertained? Do I want to watch it again?
Gladiator, come on.
This wasn't a planned question, but Eric, your favorite Marvel character is Captain America. And there's no fudging on that, right?
No.
Okay.
No.
Greg, yours is legitimately Black Widow?
No.
Okay.
That
just like the movie, but
we're so very much we're so, I mean, even Iron Man, but Iron Man, Black Widow, and a number of them, Doctor Strange, these all became popular when the movies. I mean, they were popular with comic book nerds, right, Eric?
Yeah,
I mean, you're more of that than I ever was.
Thanks.
So it should be a badge of honor now. It's kind of like, oh, then you're in the cool. So anyway, it was Spider-Man. Yeah, was my.
Who's your Spider-Man though? There's 3 of them. Which one's your Spider-Man?
Mine's a cartoon.
Ooh, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was a good series.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Like old school. Back when I was a kid, I looked forward to Spider-Man, but then also there was a DC, and so Aquaman was another one. I really like swimming, and so
Nice.
yeah,
nice.
it's it.
I like it. I
So
like talking to fish, so
yeah, yeah. So people always hated Aquaman. I heard later people hated Aquaman, so I hated them.
when are we going to talk about Jonah? Oh, that's going to be a great one.
Oh, that'll ruffle some
yeah.
feathers. So
I'm excited about that one. A
It's fun.
racist
So-
in the Bible.
There's none of those.
yeah, nowhere to be found. So really
anyway.
quick, my favorite Marvel character is the Punisher.
Good one.
Because in the comics, like long time ago, there's a point where he interacts with all the other Marvel characters and he like kills them all. So like that's a bad man. So like
There's a Deadpool of that
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
yeah,
There's 2.
Yeah.
There's 2 Deadpools of that. I mean, if I had read things like that,
yeah.
I've heard everybody who's interested in the Bible has now turned off the podcast because they're never gonna.
They're never going to get to it. Yeah.
And it's that one guy who keeps throwing them off.
Well, should we get into it then?
Let's go.
Yeah.
So last week we talked about John 6, and we talked specifically about the instance where Jesus tells his disciples, you can't have eternal life unless you eat my flesh, drink my blood, and we kind of worked through that a little bit. And that was just kind of a taste. So
That's what you did there.
yes.
Mhm.
Today we want to dive into creation. And there are a lot of misinterpretations, misconceptions, misunderstandings about the creation story, the creation narrative in Scripture. And so I wanted to just dive right in with you guys and just see what we can maybe unpack, see what maybe we can conclusions we can come to, if any. Let's just talk it out.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
Before we read any scripture, do you guys have any initial thoughts?
Plenty.
Let's hear it.
Well, I mean, like, here's questions that I immediately like interact with is time is, like, I think such a key question in all of this. When in time, how long, and then what is the period of time in between sentences that are set. Like, there's this really, like, we don't really get the scale. So like time's a really interesting, like, just question in those first few chapters of Genesis, and then it's really not until you finally get to the first family that you just you can kind of start nailing things down. But time is just I don't know, as like a beginning Christian reading this story, like trying to take it in for what it is and what it is supposed to mean as much as I could. I remember that being the thing that I wrestled with, coming back and forth, getting an answer this way. It was 7 days. It wasn't 7 days. This was that. This is, all of the but time is such an interesting concept for me in this.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. As far as misconceptions go, like, that's one that I hear a lot too. Like, science tells us it took billions of years for the earth to form, and all that, but then scriptures tell us it took 7 days. Like, is that literal 7 days? Is it figurative? Is it a metaphor? Like, how do we interpret that? If we don't interpret it literally, does anything in the Bible matter? Like, it's crazy the leaps people make. But that's the kind of stuff people wrestle with. They think if God didn't create the world in a literal 7 days, then Jesus didn't raise from the dead somehow, right? Like, that's the leap that people make. And so, like, it's crazy.
What you just illustrated is something called a false dichotomy, where it's assumed that it's an either or, but the false part is when you honestly allow it to be thought through. You go, wait a minute. This doesn't follow from this. Like, if I go out to my garage, I can either drive my car or my wife's car. That's a true statement. If I change it to I have to drive my car, otherwise I can't get anywhere. That, at least in my situation, that's a false dichotomy. It doesn't flow. There's another car I can use, is basically that. So if we go, well, this has to happen, otherwise nothing I believe about the Bible can be true. I'd say let's challenge that a little bit. Yeah, it may just be that you're really comfortable in that thought train, which is also okay for you to admit. And you can disagree with us, whatever conclusion we come to. It's all right. We'll be okay.
Yeah, 100%.
As long as you're not hiding in Ryan's basement, trying to as
grab his feet from the stairs.
Exactly. Then yes.
Have you seen those videos on TikTok? This is a total ADD moment, but have you seen those videos on TikTok where the people are like, "This is what it's like shutting my lights off in my house," or they shut the lights off and then they immediately start running, and then someone dressed in all black is chasing them up their stairs.
Nice. I had TikTok for about 3 days a couple years ago, and went, nope, this is not. And my daughter-in-law goes, that feed is because of what? Look, I know, and that's why I'm saying no. I will not make good decisions.
Yeah. So TikTok knows who I am better than I know who I am.
Exactly. So anyway, you're welcome. For everybody who needs spiritual honesty,
there you go.
This is how you make it through some things. Anyway.
Yes, absolutely. So very, very first. So creation in scripture is encapsulated from Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 through Genesis chapter 2, verse 3. That's the first I guess version there. Greg, you kind of talked about how there actually might be two mentions of creation. Is that right?
Yeah, maybe it's two narratives, because that goes into chapter 2 and seems to retell the story. Not in the same style, but you see a change in the God character, at least the Hebrew, from El to Yahweh. And I think that's correct. Now I'm suddenly questioning myself, but you see certain changes, and it's definitely a different tone. The goals seem different. And so many people read that as a cohesive story that they go together. Other people will read that as two separate stories expressing different versions of the same event or a series of events. However, if we think of creation as a whole, that's what I mean by event, but maybe made up of a series of events.
Is it too simplistic to think of it in terms of like the chapter 1 narrative is kind of the 50,000 foot view, and then chapter 2 kind of zooms in a little bit more? Is that too simplistic? Is that just incorrect? What do you think about that?
It's the way I like to think of it. But again, I kind of made a joke, or not a joke. I was just talking about the false dichotomy. I'm not trying to over push it, but how I think of it is that they're two expressions of the same series of events or event, accomplishing different things, clarifying different things. And I don't see that as taking anything away. I kind of feel like it builds up. I think when you get into why this probably was written, or what it's actually doing, rather, there's so much more that comes out of it rather than other questions. So I'm being super general, but we'll get into details.
Yeah. Well, I would love to start just by reading the first verse, if that's okay. Sure. I mean, super easy, right? In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I think there's a lot just packed in there. So from I don't speak Hebrew or anything, but I have tools to be able to look up and kind of understand the way Hebrew language is set up and that kind of thing. And one thing I learned in this sentence, the way it's kind of formulated is different. So if I if we were to translate it exactly the way it says it in Hebrew, it would sound something like, in the beginning, the gods, he created the heavens and the earth. So it talks about Elohim, which is a term for the gods, or the heavenly hosts, that kind of thing. But then that word created is a masculine singular word, and so it kind of has this, like, I don't know, it's kind of confusing if you don't understand. What do you guys think that tells us?
That it's messy. I mean, for sure. Without, again, trying to overly simplify. The I think this is like one of those things that diving into like contextual words ends up causing sometimes more confusion than not. Not saying that we shouldn't. I'm interested in kind of this part of it, which is I remember Greg, I think it was you actually in one of your messages that uh the topic of like kind of going over creation is that we so badly want it to define so that we know exactly what it is. It ends up being a sin that's committed later on, which is trying to understand God to a level in which he is understandable. And we're in the process, we just keep misunderstanding him. And so it's like I love the idea of looking at like of God ordaining the words in this moment, and him in the foresight of his word going, I'm going to express myself in my plural in order to explain late like that. It wasn't, my son didn't suddenly come onto the scene, and then my spirit wasn't suddenly different. It does explain like almost immediately as he explains God, and says, and then the spirit hovered over. So it almost like, yeah, it uses the singular, but we're talking a little bit about Trinity, I guess, or I'm bringing up like the Trinity concept. That God inhabited multiple planes of existence. Like the first thing that we really see, like he creates heaven and earth. What he's creating is reality. Like he's blinking it into existence. And then he's saying, in that reality, then my presence hovered into it. So I was beyond it and I was in it. Like that's my interpretation. At least that's how I I don't know, maybe give me some better Bible here potentially. But I love the multi-dimensional aspect of him. To me, what Trinity ends up meaning for me is this omnipotence is both out of my concept and within my like understanding of physical form. I don't know. Give me better Bible in this, but
one technical difficulty later.
Back on the question now that I'm off. Just had headphone problems. We're going to work this out. So maybe like episode 18, we'll have these little glitches. Anyway, so I want people to engage the Bible. My first instinct at this point is not to include concepts of the Trinity. But I also don't want to shut down. I don't want to do anything to shut down a conversation about that stuff. So, because I think it's a part of the process, right? Because we're in a certain spot and we go, oh, I wonder if this is involved. And it allows you to start thinking about these theological concepts. I want all that to happen. I really, really do. Alongside that, I think as you are trying to even examine that stuff, I hope that we find a way to go, well, what does that story mean? And it hasn't mentioned those things. We read Elohim in other places as plural. And I'm not saying it's not, but it's also singular, used singular, and can be modified. The reading of it can be modified by the other word. When he is used, then we can go, oh, they're talking about one, probably.
But it's also, as Eric said, it's not entirely clear. Later on in this chapter, when it uses the word or it's translated us. Yeah, there's a there's a plural there,
Yeah.
and so what are we to do with that? As at least at this stage, I just go, oh, I don't know.
Mhm.
And at some other stage, I might go, is it possible that Trinity's involved here? That there's this 3-in-1 thing. I go, yeah, it's possible.
Mhm.
But whether I feel like there's enough data to connect those, I don't. But I know
Sure.
tons of people that do. So
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my thought. Something that interests me at some point about that first sentence, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. One, I preach messages where I think it's just fun. It's not a great reading of it, but I just go, in the beginning, God. That's not a good hermeneutic. I just like that it begins there. And so,
Yeah.
and it's fun to preach and gets people going. So that's a lot of fun. But I read that some people read that as a title. That it's written a little different than the rest of the passage and section, and so it may just be the title to this. Almost like later on in Genesis, here are the generations of that. This would be one of in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth as a title, and then it goes, and the Spirit. I think verse 2 is right. The Spirit is hovering.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, yeah. So those are my random.
So I have some interesting thoughts, and this one that I'm about to share might upset some people.
We'll be the judge whether they're interesting.
Trigger warning.
Trigger. Yeah.
But Genesis, a misconception I think is that the Bible is completely unique, and that everything in the Bible is wholly completely unlike anything that's ever been written, and that is not true at all.
Right.
Genesis is not unique to like religious texts. There's a Mesopotamian text, the 7 tablets of creation, or it's called Enuma Elish, that starts in the beginning, right? And so it kind of, the story in Genesis parallels Enuma Elish. If you read Enuma Elish, they kind of parallel each other in certain ways, but it's Genesis is making different claims than Enuma Elish is making. So in Enuma Elish, in the beginning, there's this god called Tiamat. It's like a water god or something, and this other younger god named Marduk comes, and Tiamat and Marduk start battling for creative control. Tiamat wants to be the creator of the universe, and Marduk wants to be creative, so they start battling, and ultimately Marduk rips Tiamat in half, and out of that he's able to start creating. And so Marduk, through this cosmic battle, becomes the creator god. Well, in Genesis, we don't see that. We just see this God who's already supreme, and he just starts creating. So I think Genesis is taking the template of a story that was already really well known and just changing details to make claims about our God. You know what I mean? And there's no cosmic battle. God's not fighting for control. He has no rival. He just starts creating. And that is a huge claim in the ancient Near East and in the world of the Bible. That's a humongous claim. And people would have been like, what?
Yeah.
There's no fight, there's no battle, and so like I think even just that one sentence has so much more meaning than anybody in the Western world even knows, because they don't have the context of what was written even before the Bible was written, So
yeah, and shared and things like that. They're fighting for, I think, at some point, it's an interesting read. It's a challenge. It's very difficult to kind of get your head around. But they seem to be fighting for who has control of the Tablet of Destinies. So I feel like I'm setting up an anime or manga or whatever, how you pronounce that. But some some cartoon that's very drawn out and aggressive, which kind of would be, but basically another creation story. It's kind of a question I have. What makes the Bible? What makes the Bible's creation myth different from other myths? And we would have a conversation about what's a myth and things like that. And so I think at least the stuff I've read and encountered, the Pillar podcast from, it was a while back, probably 5 or 7, somewhere just 7 years ago. No, maybe 5. Let's go with 5. Anyway, they actually read, I think, the whole of Numa Elish on the podcast. I was like, this is really, really dull.
Yeah.
But the two guys doing it were like, this is the greatest thing ever. And they've forgotten more about the Bible than I've ever learned, and that's fine. But they're just stuck in it. I mean, anyway, they're awesome, but it's a lot. But I think the takeaway that it's at least partially a response to the other points of view that that there's one God who doesn't need to win over anything. He just is. Who's got the tablet of destinies? He is it. He's the one who declares destiny.
Yeah.
He's the one who declares purpose and everything else. So it's a good point. It's at least there's hints of it. So when you see a snake, you're like, oh. Later on, you see a serpent, and you're like, yeah, there's a lot of serpent motifs and other creation myths and stuff around the area. So
I mean, it's an interesting conversation that is, I mean, very consistently is going to come up, but who is the author? Who's he writing to? Ryan, I think to like the point of like bringing it up, if you are trying to convince a bunch of people who have been enslaved by a multi-deity faith culture, and you want to prove to them that I am, and is coming and has freed them, you're going to rewrite current narratives into what they have already come to understand. A lot of them being unlearned, uneducated, probably don't know how to read, probably don't know how to write. They're going to be interacting now. Although there is Jewish culture, they're still being told. They're aware. At least there's a, what we get in when Moses comes on the picture is like, hey, you need to remind them who I am. I am the God of their ancestors. Like, and so there's like oh yeah, them, like that again. But I think kind of looking, there's so many times that whenever I'm talking to people in my congregation about, why these specific stories, why are they there? I'm like, that's the really good question. What is he trying to prove in this? Is he trying to prove how God created or that he created? And I think that's a really powerful thing to encounter when reading the Bible is, am I trying to prove that God is real to myself, or am I trying to come into this to understand more about the God I already believe? And I think if you like, there's times to read in both contexts of like, hey, God, I need some evidence, or I need some proof, and man, what better place than his existing word to find the proof of who he is and where he's been and what he's doing and what he has the potential to do again in your life. But at the same time, I think when opening up Genesis, I think there's a really healthy perspective of, I'm not going to try to find a new set of beliefs and standards in which I now need to force every little aspect of my life. Instead, I just get to let it read my life and say, this is my God. Look how powerful he is. Look in comparison to anything else. And if he could make great things, no matter the time, that he is the creator, then he is also the finisher of whatever situation that I'm in right now. And so I think there's something really powerful interacting with Genesis in that first line. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. What I'm defining is, one, where I am living is not a mistake, and where I am going is planned. Like I think that like that key, and then now what else is from there? Like what else is added onto that? Oh, now he initiates relationships and family and and then we made decisions with that from that. Like that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting, like, so again, like I create reality and then now he's created purpose. Like that's that shift in perspective of reading the Bible. I think is huge. And if I'm an ancient Israelite wandering a desert, learning a new set of laws and being, roped together with ancestors I'm familiar with, but now I have to work alongside, I'm going to need something really great in order to live off of bread. Like, and I'm going to get a little angry. I want some water. Can you speak to that rock? Like, could you hit it?
Yeah.
I don't care where it comes from. It's all that type of stuff.
Yeah, there's a ton wrapped in there. A lot of this is accessible. It is studyable. I just made up a word. Researchable, workable. I think questions about where does the idea of Yahweh come from? At what point? Because Abraham's before Moses, so is there an ongoing story that's being shared orally between within the tribes, because identity seems to exist. It seems pretty clear that a group identity as people of Abraham or children of Abraham exists. So who knows what the narratives were coming from? But the connection that I think you're both right. I don't know that it matters that I think that, but I think I think Eric's where he's going is really helpful, that we go, okay, what do we do with this, with some of this information? And it's going to be, I find more connection to God. So if you're wondering if we're doing a narrative read, a story read, then we're going, who is involved in the beginning? Okay, we got the setting, and the second verse helps with the setting too, but we've got the main character is introduced right out of the gate, God. General Bible listeners, readers, you and I are not the main characters.
Yes.
David's not the main character. Abraham, Moses, it's God throughout this entire thing. So anyway, kind of a side thing, but for this text, that to me is really helpful. How are we going to, we talked about movies earlier, and if we talk about Captain America, and if you're like, this movie's about the Red Skull, you're going to go, real? I think you missed the entire movie.
The title of the movie.
Yeah, if you are literally red and made of a skull, then I'm not saying you wouldn't identify with the Red Skull. Or if you were a genius scientist and decided to take over the planet, maybe you want him to be, but the narrative is not pointing to that. He may be your hero. It may be your narrative that you're reading into this, but this story isn't telling that story. Right. Yeah, you can write your own, but this story is telling this thing. He's saying, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Yeah. And it seems to be an ongoing thing too. So.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And for me, I connect with God on an intellectual level. I mean, like emotionally, I connect with God, but like when it cements itself in me is when I connect with it intellectually. And so for me to dive into these extra biblical texts to understand the biblical text better, it helps me to feel like, yes, this is what it's telling me about God. It helps me to connect to God. And so I want to echo what you guys are saying, like, however you need to connect with God, do that. Like whatever helps you connect with God, do that. And to echo what you said, Greg, about this is the story's not about us. Like I think I think that so many people approach the Bible wrongly, if that's even a word. I think people, I try to coach my congregation all the time to like, Don't approach the Bible asking the question, how does this apply to me? Approach the Bible with the question, what does this tell me about God? And then once you answer that question, then you can ask, okay, now how does this apply to me? Because it's about him. The Bible is about, it's his word about him to help us know him better. And once we know his character better, we can better understand what he wants from us, desires from us, wants for us. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I echo you on that, you guys. So
Thank you.
yes. Well,
we got the first line done.
Yes.
So verse 2 now.
No. Well, okay. So, but there's another idea kind of in there that we talked about a little bit, that maybe it's that, maybe it's not, but I thought maybe you guys tell me if I'm just taking it in a way different direction, but I think another misconception that your average run-of-the-mill like Christ follower believes is that there's only one spiritual being. There's only one divine being, and that's what monotheism is. But from what I understand of what the Bible says, that's not monotheism. What do you guys think about that?
I think it's an interesting thought, or I've heard it brought up about whether the Hebrew people were ever monotheists. Not that, and I'm not saying that the Bible wasn't putting forth what we call monotheism, and I think it is, but whether in practice they ever made that real switch, just even off the biblical text, doesn't seem to be. They struggle with that the entire time. So yeah, that's why they keeps being, don't be idolaters, don't do idols over and over again. There's a reason. But monotheism is definitely our word. It is, the Bible to me does seem to be presenting that there is at minimum one main God, and that there's no rivals, like you pointed out. There's no battles going on over who's in charge. Everything is put together and ordered, which is another thing out of Genesis, out of this Genesis 1 about what is actually going on. So that seems very, very clear. But there's also, we just don't have enough information, but there does seem to be a good, at least for me, but when I say, sometimes when I'm saying, and this is one of these cases that I don't think there's enough information, it's that I'm not settled. Like I personally haven't heard enough data, but it may be out there. Maybe I just haven't read it. That's entirely possible, or encountered it. But there does seem to be a great many of really good scholars, and I probably lean towards what they're saying, is that there's something about a what am I trying to think of? Like a court that God holds, and you see it in Job, but you see it also in Genesis. And what's the term I'm looking for here?
Heavenly hosts, sons of God.
Those are the groups that show up. But anyway, just think, if a king holds court and his nobles come and they meet with them, there seems to be something going on.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult. So I'll just, maybe the best I could probably share is just my experiences running into some of the questions more than any specific knowledge or things that I could kind of point to. There seems I don't know. I don't want to keep saying necessarily what I've said already. We got a very specific writer communicating a very specific way. And then it doesn't seem to repeat in its way later on. And so the question is, the question that I go to next is, what is the style of writing that is being presented right now? And so and that's kind of the confusing thing about when we're looking at this very first section of Genesis, because then it switches very narrative, like, and it's narrative for a very long time. And you know, up until you get to Moses, this is a very narrative storytelling book. My wife, just as kind of a fun practice right now, is reading the story version of the Bible, where it just makes it kind of a book version of it. So she's, you know, pointing things. She goes, it's interesting what they, and they have references in the back of the book of what was left and all these, you know, little subnotes. But the way she's interacting with it is like if God was just telling the narrative story, not the history, but just here I am and here's how I got to my son. Like, and then how you interact with that is just very, very different. And so like, so I know I keep coming back to like, if I'm writing a persuasive document that is looking at people who have a current history and understanding of things, am I going to be persuasive by rewriting the complete narrative structure of what they've understood? No, I'm going to use their language in order. So like whenever when we do evangelism in our church, or when I do one-on-one conversations with people, something I always try to do is I don't want to rewrite your language quite yet. Actually, I want to find your language and then figure out, hey, this is actually like we use the same word at its root. We just call it different right now. So you call it the universe, I call it God. Most people believe in this weird connectivity that we have with all of mankind, and it's existed well before social media and internet, where we would have access. For some reason, you care that there are kids in Africa that are hungry. There's something at the core of us that when we interact with Genesis, when we're interacting with the idea of a creator and that he created, that we all wrestle with that it had to happen. Just how, like, who did it is kind of the thing. And I can just imagine, to me, I'm imagining Moses writing these documents. He's, you know, it's his final years, and he's making sure it's being passed along so that there is just enough understanding as they walk into the promised land. And all of it, especially when you go into Deuteronomy, it's all generationally focused. I just need you to keep telling these stories. Because you guys already in 40 years are keep forgetting the things they told you 40 years ago. So what would he reiterate? What would he hit on again? And what language pieces is he trying to rewrite? It's my favorite interpretation of the plagues against Egypt is God. I call it God going to work against the other gods, where it's like, oh, you believe that all life comes from the Nile. Well, I'm going to make it blood, like as a sign of I am over the Nile. So like if I can look at it the same way, and he's going, yeah, you've battled in history before me with all the sons of God, all of these spiritual beings. I sit above them. I sit as the host. And so instead of going like there are no other, again, to the monotheistic part of it, instead of like, oh, I just need to prove that I'm the only God. No. I'm above the gods. Like who's your God? I'm above him. Like, well, does that mean my God exists? Here's the thing. He's so above him that it doesn't even matter that your God exists anymore. Like that's the height, the power that I like whenever I'm reading it, I'm imagining, you know? So I think there, at least in the text, we see like, yeah, hey, here is an explanation of heavenly beings and figures and hosts and you know, potentially demigods and all this type of stuff. And then none of it matters because now he's the superpower, you know?
Yeah.
And
That's good.
the term I was looking for was divine counsel. I completely agree here. Bible Project, 100%. That's the place to go, I think, for this. They do a whole series on spiritual beings, and they cover intro to spiritual beings, Elohim, divine counsel, angels and cherubim, angel of the Lord, Satan and demons, and the new humanity and stuff. Then it just focuses on it brings those things, but it helps you focus on the things that are intended from it. And so in this, is there, is Elohim plural? I don't think so. Is it, does it mean multi-gods? I don't think that's not what the narrative seems to be pointing to. And what we have here is one God. It's being said, like Eric's saying, the story is saying one God did this. And how did he do it? And what things did he accomplish as he was doing it? So anyway, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that's good. I think of, when I think about this, as far as like the 21st century American Christian idea of monotheism, that there's one God, one spiritual being, and none other, you know, I think of like Greek mythology, how I think of Roman mythology, I think of Mesopotamian, the Mesopotamian religion, I think of the Egyptian religion, where there's all these gods that are kind of on equal footing, and it's just kind of a matter of who won the last fight as to who's in charge. And that was that's kind of how polytheism is all these gods who are equal. And you know, it's whoever's the toughest at the time is the one who's in charge. But like, yeah, I think, yeah, what you said, Eric, like it's taking what's culturally relevant or culturally known and changing the details to kind of help them see, like, you know, like our God, this is who our God is. And this is a question, like, could the Bible, or not, maybe not the Bible, but could we have an accurate understanding that God is supreme if there was no other deities to be supreme over? Does that question make sense? Like,
I think if you begin with where you began, that some of this, at least partially, is intended as a response to other thought ways of thinking, then yes. Is that
okay?
So, because the narrative would be pushing against that, not the question of whether there are spiritual beings. It kind of assumes that something's there, but that there's not, as Eric talked about, that there's not really a contest. So it doesn't address any contest because there are none.
Right. I think this is an interesting topic that is probably a whole other podcast, or maybe even a whole other like series of podcasts, is spiritual beings. And because like, I think the church, the big C church, right, the body of Christ, has done a really bad job of leaning into the spiritual side of things, as far as like, there's this whole other spiritual realm that I think most people are completely unaware of, but it exists. Yeah, it's real, right? And I think there's a lot of churches. I can think of a few right now that they're motivational speaking conferences every week. You know, it's life coach, go be a better person, that type, which is fine. Like, let's be like Jesus here and now. That's a thing. But then also there's another side of the coin too, where there is this spiritual battle that Paul talks about in Ephesians, right? Like, we're not battling against flesh and blood. We're battling against principalities, which is other realms, you know, of spiritual darkness, you know what I mean? And so like, I think it is important for people to understand, like, there is more than what we see here going on, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I mean,
anyway.
like, it's, I think, to some of the story that we get later on, when God starts interacting with more and more people, it becomes evident that there is something that people can't see, that he's trying to defend his people against, and it's not just moral behavior. Like, Babylon wasn't just bad because they were morally bad. There was something locked onto, if you know, that it was no, they're more than dangerous. It's actually and not that he couldn't overcome, it was that we as his creation could not overcome. So we need him to fight battles that we cannot. And the free will of it is us allowing him to be our God. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, I will. You that's kind of, and so every time there's capturing, every time we're interacting with this, why is he telling, hey, kings, don't bring in people that will don't it's not a race thing. It's a don't mix the gods here. Don't mess with this. It comes in subtly, and then it comes in rapidly. And I think that's we see that literally from the beginning of in the imagery of a snake that comes. It's just this little slithering thing, and then once you entertain it, it takes over everything. And it's our frailty held up against the mighty power of God. And so I like this story that we can read, and it seems structured over and over again, our powerlessness. And then I'm a big Jesus guy. I read the Bible to get to Jesus. And so if you want to know my perspective going through a lot of this, I'm going, where's Jesus? Where is he in this? Because that's what I care about. And to me, I was powerless. I had no chance. It was failure. I was set up for failure. Perfection was the standard. And now I needed to see that my God could put on human form and still be God. How great is he that he could even be me and still be greater? That's a whole new level. To me, that's again, it's not a hat on a hat. It's a no. Oh, you need this? Great. Here it is. That's the mightiness of it for me.
I think that for me, that's the importance of the Old Testament, or what we can call the Hebrew Bible, is that part that Eric's talking about doesn't have its substance without the Hebrew Bible.
Yes.
Where if you go, Jesus is the Word, you go from John 1, in the beginning was the Word. Well, okay, it's this Genesis account, the rest of the Hebrew Bible that we'll talk about. This is where that substance come from. This is the stuff that is built up. This is the wisdom that is being given, which wisdom's a whole other thing that is alongside here, because Proverbs talks about everything was made through wisdom, through Lady Wisdom and stuff. Jesus being connected to this with John, the creation of an order, which is another. This first chapter is about, in my opinion, and I like joking, and I'm right. I wouldn't say it if I didn't think I was correct, or say it with fervor. It's disorder coming into order. Yeah. As ordained by God, as clarified by God, by Yahweh Elohim in the second, and the English translation would be Lord, by the Lord God, and or the Lord of all gods, however you want to go with that one, for this conversation. That what was in disorder, with the Hebrew version in the second verse is tohu vavohu, what was just without any form, is formless and void. It lacked any order. God said, nah, let's give it order.
Yeah.
And that's what this story is doing. That's what he's declaring. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. God put it all together. We're worried about, well, where did the stuff come from? That's not what the story's saying. Mm-hmm. It's not what it's about. I'm not saying it's not a relevant question, but you may need to go to other sources to kind of discover that and explore that. This story is saying something else. I'm
saying it's irrelevant. I am.
You're the one. That's the. If you need someone to blame, Ryan.
Send all hate emails to ericSwallace@gmail.com.
Put me on blast. It'll be great.
Yeah, that's it.
Here's my address too. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Man, we didn't even get past verse 1. and we didn't even get into any of that, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a whole other, I feel like that's a whole other probably 2 or 3 podcasts.
Yeah, and that's where
but-
that's absolutely where it goes, and that's you get that reading, and if you're willing to listen and set aside all the stuff right now and just go, okay, I'm going to see if what they're saying is how this possibly functions. You'll actually find better information that makes you feel more solid. And I mean, maybe not. This has been my experience, I guess, but you'll come away with a stronger appreciation. You can come away better with a stronger appreciation and understanding of God, a better way of trusting him, because this is, I mean, look at what he's doing, man.
Yeah.
You thought you had this locked, man, and we're going deeper. No, we're saying, no, more fundamentally, this is what is really going on. And it's stinking fascinating. It's unbelievable when you go to, so what does God do for the pinnacle? He made you. He made people. He made us. That's incredible. And that's, again, like you said, a whole other podcast. But, man, but we start asking, well, when did this happen? How long did it take? It's not what the story's doing, but we can do another stuff on it.
Something that changed the way I think about it, the even just the whole Old Testament is, I heard Professor Scott Booth talk about how the Bible is an Eastern culture document written thousands of years ago to a people across an ocean, and we are Western culture people who live in 2025, and we have refrigerators and air conditioning. Our first like instinct toward the scriptures is probably not going to be correct, because we're not the same as the people that the Bible was written to. And so like you got to do the work, you know, is what he always says. You got to put in the work, you got to do the work. I'm like, man, yeah, and it's a gold mine. There's so much there. I mean, we went through one verse in Genesis for an hour, guys. There's so much.
Well, I think there's something really important. Let us not be a group of believers who are named Jacob, that are allowing ourselves to just be heel grabbers on other people's good ideas. But can we just be the ones who wrestle with God? Let him change our name to I think something that will again become a recurring theme is, as we mature in our faith, there's such an anti questioning of our faith, of what does this mean. I tell most people, I think most people are Christians in the same way that they chose their bank. Well, my parents did it. My parents went to Wells Fargo. My parents went to US Bank. You know, like it's like, well, when does it become yours? Like, when are you not just heel grabber? When are you not just someone else's idea, but it becomes your God, that he gets to define these things for you? To me, that's the monotheistic thing, is not whether or not there are multiple gods, is that he is my one and only. Like, that's it.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah,
it's good.
I'm thinking, man, there's so much. But some people talk about, if you ask them, Eric, and you go, well, they're like, I don't believe in God, or whatever it is. I'm not sure about. Well, how do you perceive God? And then they tell you, and you go, well, I don't believe in that God either. And then they might look at you strange and go, well, you're a Christian. Yeah, I agree, but whatever's been presented to you isn't what's in this book. Actually. And so anyway, there's a bunch of reasons. So I think we should just understand, and I'm getting ready to tell a joke. So something funny to me. Sometimes people need to hear me say that because they might think I'm serious. I think we should go look at the word rakia and figure out why the earth is flat. Because clearly the moon landing was fake.
Faked. And what is it?
And we get
Ezekiel
that, guys. We
about
get that from Genesis. Some things I have a hard time even joking about, because I cannot comprehend how they get there. But anyway, somehow from Rakia, we get a flat earth. Yeah, it's not doing that. Let me just say.
Well, Ezekiel
fired.
Ezekiel talks about the four corners of the earth. That means flat, right?
Sure, and it's all stacked on. It's turtles. What is the Earth on? It's on top of a turtle.
Yeah.
And well, what's underneath that turtle? Another turtle, and it's infinite turtles.
Yeah.
If we're
God
gonna
in
be
the
a little
book of
Indian.
God in the book of Job refers to Earth as a sphere. So
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible contradicts itself once again.
Yeah.
Well, is that a wrap, guys?
Let's go.
Yeah,
I like it.
sure.
Are we doing part 2 next week, or are we going to come back to it a couple weeks from now?
Next week at least. I mean, these episodes are going to come out different, but right now next week is a Super Bowl, so it'll have to we'll have to schedule a different time.
Well, I mean, who do we love more, the God of football or the God of gods? You know, and if I can
do you
go,
mean Pat? Do you mean Pat Mahomes?
Yeah, if I can actually get Keys to come up real quick.
I call him Pat because we hang out.
We're gonna make it spiritual in here for a
Where's
second.
Adam Irwin? He
Yeah,
is the best altar call pianist I've ever met. So
God
we
bless
need
you.
Adam Irwin for this moment. So, shout out Adam.
Yeah, feature guest.
Yes, for sure, for sure. So, all right, let's get out of here. If you are enjoying the Odd Testament podcast, we'd love your support. The best way to help us keep bringing all this weird, amazing content is to show us some love on social media, TikTok, Instagram, I think Facebook, all those places, YouTube. We need reviews, we need likes, 5-star review, all that good stuff. We want it all. So that's the best way to help us get the word out to all that people, or all the other people. And take a moment to write a review. 5-star reviews would help us the most. If you have a 1-star review, just make a 5-star review and then tell us why it's a 1-star review actually in the comments. So I'm so excited about this, guys. I love this.
I don't want 1-star reviews. I don't care. Let me be like rude. You're like 1 star. Look, you need to find something else to do. If you're so angry that you need to put 1 star on some random YouTube thing, then man, I'm assuming you're a dude. Good Lord. Find something else to do. Go attack somebody else. Maybe we're stupid and you're a genius, but maybe you could take your genius somewhere else.
Yeah, where's your podcast?
Am I ruining? Did I ruin your outro? Sorry.
No, it's all good. It's all good. That reminds me of
me.
something. Yeah, that reminds me of something real quick. We had dinner with a family that their kids go to school with our kids, and the mother of this family, her job is her YouTube channel. Like, she's monetized it, and I mean grown it like significantly. It's really awesome. And I was talking to her about this and trying to pick her brain a little bit, and and one thing that she was adamant about, she goes, just be prepared, people are gonna start Reddit threads about you. Like, okay, and
how good looking we are.
I guess people
we went to the same place. Well,
she does like DIY, like home renovations, that kind of thing. And people just drag her through the mud. I'm like, what? Like, what is there to drag her through the mud about? Like, all she does is like these home improvement things. So like, not all, but like she's not like getting controversial or anything. And people are like,
okay,
just destroying her on Reddit.
If that ever happens, then I want one of our segments to be reading one of them just for fun.
Yes. Oh yes, I would love that. That would be awesome.
That won't be good, would it? That would be, because what are we going to do with it anyway?
Well, I don't know if we're going to get a ton of those, because Christians are known for being the most civil and kind and well-mannered people. So
yes, that's why there's 45,000 different denominations of Christianity in the world.
And all of them right, Yeah. That's what we're finding out in 2025.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Good.
So,
all right.
Good.
All right, guys. Well, I'm going to hit you with the did you know, and then we could take off. Did you know that the average cloud weighs about 1 million pounds? Did you know that?
No.
1 million pounds on average.
Planes are more impressive now.
Yes.
Who weighed
some scientist, probably Fauci.
Why are they fat shaming clouds?
Fauci
That would be.
changing.
It's not really. It would be moisture shaming. Why are they moisture shaming clouds?
Yeah.
I think they need to find kindness in their hearts.
That sound that sounds like a stat like Donald Trump would have shared. These clouds weigh 1,000,000 pounds. Yeah.
Where are they coming from? Send
So,
them back to where they came from.
Anyways, your support means the world to us, and together
We
we
don't
can
like dark-
share this odd and amazing pod with the world. We love you guys. See you later.
See ya.
Bye.